Hey, are you an entrepreneur or a want to be entrepreneur, but you are struggling with clarity or getting started? Have you always wanted to be a business owner, but you don't know what to do, what kind of business to run? Do you desperately want to leave your full-time job because you feel like entrepreneurship is in your heart and that you are meant to do it? Well, that's what today's video is going to cover. I'm going to talk about my entrepreneurship journey and how I have gotten to where I am today. So, my name is Lisa. I'm a speaker, author, and a coach, mom to 8 gorgeous kids. And I have had quite the adventure, let me tell you. And so today is going to be a little bit of Q&A. I ask people over on the good old Instagram. I'm at Lisa Canning. If you want to follow me over there, I ask people to submit their questions over there. And as well, I have some very commonly asked questions that I typically get asked. And so we are going to have fun. It's going to be part Q&A and part looking into the timeline of my entrepreneurship journey. So I'm pretty gosh darn excited. Are you? Let me know if you're watching this live. Feel free to say hello in the comments and I will get back to all of your questions in real time. Okay. So my entrepreneurship journey started in 1991. So I'm 36 years old at time of upload. And there we go, 1991. Can you read that? I hope you can read that. So at 6 years old, I went to an elementary school at Yonge and Finch in Toronto, Canada. And I remember there were girls a year ahead of me, and they had mastered the art of plastic string. Let me know in the comments if you remember what that is, or GIMP, also known as GIMP, if anybody knows it as that. But I think it's like not PC to say GIMP anymore. I don't know why. Anyway, they mastered the art, and I remember they started selling pens, if I'm not mistaken. So pens that were wrapped in this plastic string in kind of like cool braids. And they started selling them in the schoolyard. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like I could do that too. And so I think I started bracelets so that I wasn't directly competing with them, but I figured out in my head that it cost me 5 cents or whatever it was to get a little bit of this plastic string and that I could sell it for, I think that I was selling them for 25 cents, maybe 10 cents. We were making a killing back then in 1991. And that is my earliest memory of entrepreneurship. In 1997, and I remember this so clearly because my mom made such a positive big deal about it. And I remember even back then being like, my mom is making such a big deal of this. Like, what is this? It was my first ever paycheck. I played my violin. So I played violin for like 16 years. I actually really miss it. I really want to bust it out. I have all the muscle memory for every song imaginable, including the Bach double, if anybody is a fellow violin player, and all the Brandenburg concertos. I remember. Okay, so is that my next career? My next entrepreneurial journey is playing violin while singing it. Anyways, I'm obviously kidding. But I got paid, I remember maybe $60 or something to play at the church's CWL. So that's like my next memory of entrepreneurship. In 2004, thought it would be fun to share a little bit of the childhood stories. In 2004, I started Mary Kay, and that was such a fun story. I studied fashion communications at Ryerson University, and a girlfriend of mine who was a fellow RA, I was a resident, what does RA stand for? Anyway, I was like the leader of the floor. Like students would come to me. I was like paid staff to make sure that people didn't get into too much trouble and all that kind of stuff. And a fellow RA was a photography major, and she invited me to go on this photo shoot with her up in, I think, the Bruce Peninsula. It was like so beautiful. I remember we were like trekking everywhere. I had all these fancy clothes. It was like me, Karina, the photographer, a model. I fell in a huge hole. And I remember the model's face that day. We did all this trekking and her makeup looked flawless from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I remember asking Karina, like, what is this makeup? Like, she looks amazing. And she shared with me that it was Mary Kay, that her mom had sold it for many, many years. We ended up doing an impromptu, try on at the time. And I sold Mary Kay all through university. That was like my fun pocket money, like wanna like go out on the weekend type of spending money. So that was 2004. And then 2007, dun, 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 was my HGTV show. So this is a crazy fun story. And I've got another video that I'll link for you right here. Just click right here, that tells a bit more of that backstory. But super briefly, I went to a performing arts high school. And one of the moms at my high school was always like, Lisa, like your job should be in TV. Like you need to be in TV. And I remember turning to her and being like, or at least in my head, Mercedes, actually no, Mrs. DeCastro, Mrs. DeCastro. I don't even understand what you mean. Like, how do you have a job being on TV? And she had kind of kept in touch over high school. She had always like encouraged me. And my second year of university, I'm sorry, somewhere in my university journey, she put me in touch with this television production company named Tricon Films in Toronto. And they had this opportunity for the very first, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm pretty positive it was the very first docu-style reno show. So I'm sure you're familiar. There's so many now where it's a little bit more documentary style, following people. It's not your sort of what used to be the design show, which was just so focused on the before and after. Now design shows are so much more about like sort of the docu, real life, behind the scenes type of thing, the pain and the struggle. And so that was a show called Marriage Under Construction. And that is what really launched my career. The ironic thing about all of this is that I had zero desire to like build an interior design business. And I don't mean to say that flippantly. I'm just being honest. Like I kind of thought in my head this was going to be a part-time job, that this television show gig was a part-time job. And then after it was over, I would find my real job, which was going to be like in fashion, because that's what I studied in university. I studied fashion communications. When the show aired, they aired a marathon. And I remember they aired the marathon when I was on my honeymoon, December 2007. They aired this marathon and I returned back to my inbox in Toronto, because this was back before you had a smartphone. Like, oh my word, does anyone remember the time when you did not constantly have your email accessible every minute of the day? So I returned back to my computer and my Hotmail account with an influx of inquiries of people asking, like, can you please come and design my home? And that is where Lisa Canning Interiors, that's eventually what the name was called. I called it different things in the beginning. I think I was Lisa Canning Creative Consulting in the beginning. I think I was, I had a blog called Kids by Canning and Condos by Canning at various points. But eventually the name would become Lisa Canning Interiors. And from 2007 into 2012, that's when I saw just lots of, how do I want to call it? Fall on my face growth. So meaning, I took on anybody and everybody who would hire me to do interior design. I did commercial spaces, I did retail spaces, I did tiny little homes, I did massive gargantuan homes. And I'll just be very transparent. I was figuring it out as I went. And a big thing changed 2012 because I realized that I couldn't really get any farther than I had without a little bit of help. So that was my very first year hiring professional or where I paid is what I mean. I had engaged in coaching, to finish that thought. Coaching. I had engaged in informal coaching and definitely like for trade coaching with a family member in the beginning, with an amazing woman who we traded services. We traded services with each other. But in 2012, that is when I approximately, I'm pretty sure it's 2012, invested in business coaching that had a group element as well as one-on-one. And that is when I started to, I think and behave more like a business owner, meaning not somebody who kind of was just sort of testing the waters and trying everything. And I think that kind of has to happen a little bit when you are in entrepreneurship, especially if you're not exactly like, just remember, I had no intention of starting an interior design business when I got all those emails. It really was just I really like doing this. I really like helping people. I have this platform thanks to this HGTV show. Can I make something of this, for my family? And yeah, so a few years later, I had, I think, 3 small kids at this time. This is when I remember starting to think more like a business owner, thinking more about profit, thinking more about how do you make money and how do you remain sustainable, all those kinds of things. All right. So then 2013 to 2015, that is the time my interior design business saw absolutely the most growth. And let me know in the comments if you are currently a business owner, or if you really desire to start a business, because I think this is where it's going to start getting very interesting. Especially if you feel like you don't know what to do. I just want to share with you that this is the point where I started to pivot and where it got really interesting, where it got really messy, where it got very emotionally messy, all the things. So let me know in the comments if you're a business owner or if you want to be a business owner, because I think this is really going to be helpful to you, I hope. So 2013 to 2015 was what I call the Property Brothers era. So that is when I saw the most financial growth in my business. That is also when I saw the most, I would say, like media acclaim. All the things happened, I would say 2013 to 15, in terms of interior design. I also renovated my own home during that time in a huge, massive overhaul. It was super exciting and also a super, I really grew up quickly, I think, in that period of time. And P.S., the Property Brothers are amazing. Also, they're going to take over the world. Like, they also now have a magazine. It's interesting. I did some really fun projects while working more in their teams. I was on the back end of one of their shows, 2 of their shows, actually. And then I also project managed their book. They have this beautiful book. I think I have it. Okay, it's not in reach, but it's usually right here on my shelf. I think one of my children stole it. Anyway, so I project managed their book, which was so much fun because we went all over the Greater Toronto area and beyond, crafting these beautiful photo shoots for their book. I worked with the publisher. It was such an interesting experience. Okay, so to give you a sense of what was happening in my personal life, I was hanging on by a thread. So this, I think when you're an entrepreneur, there's so much riding on your business. You in your head are really trying to make something work. And especially when you're young, I found this at least, and let me know if this is a similar thing for you as a young person. I really felt like I had something to prove. I felt like I had something to prove to my parents. I felt like I had something to prove to the people I went to school with. I felt like I had something to prove to my professors at school, all these things. So I hustled hard. And I think as a result of hustling hard, I began to understand, or I began to tell myself the story, rather, that success was ultimately tied up in external accomplishments. So let me just give you an example. I remember when I got a piece published in Style at Home, I was like, oh my gosh, I've made it. I remember when I was invited to design a space at the interior design show and got paid to do that. I remember being like, I have made it. Like, I remember when my face was literally on a massive sort of billboard of sorts, like in a prestigious location, sort of in the interior design world. I just remember being like, okay, amazing. I've made it. But then as soon as the luster, the glossy pages, as soon as, the 30 seconds of fame or what have you wore off, I was again discontented and again constantly looking sideways for what was going to come next. And that's, I think, the danger when we place our external accomplishments in, or when we place our success in external accomplishments. Okay. I've recorded a whole bunch of other videos about that. So if you're interested in that topic, go up here. But I share all that with you in that this was a time of exceptional growth for my business. This was a time of just great excitement. It was the most money we had made in the business, and then of course made for my family. But then this also came with my minivan meltdown. So I tell in the very first opening of my book, The Possibility Mom, How to Be a Great Mom and Pursue Your Dreams at the Same Time, how when I was working on a job site, I put so much pressure on myself to literally days out of hospital, like 5 days out of hospital, show up with my baby girl Rose, my brand new infant. And like I said, I've done lots of videos on that, so you can go and hear more about that. But that was the pivotal turning point to everything that is now what my business is, The Possibility Mom. So 2015 to 2017. So I had this moment in my minivan where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sacrificing my health, the relationships that matter most. I am constantly exhausted. Had this moment in my minivan where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sacrificing my health, the relationships that matter most. I am constantly exhausted. I'm constantly feeling joy, but be able to show up for my family. So one of the biggest things I changed, the first thing I changed was the business model. So prior to 2015, I was mainly implementing projects, which means that I was designing, and then I was the person who was literally like the conductor saying, okay, this needs to happen now. Demo needs to happen on this day, framing on this day, da 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 da. When I made this declaration that success to me was no longer going to be working 85 plus hours a week, oh boy, I said, all right, how can I still make money and do the thing that I love and be able to be in my kids' schoolyard to pick them up at 3:30? And so I shifted my interior design business to a consulting model where instead of running around the city and being exhausted and dealing with many, many, many things and lots of correspondence and lots of people and dealing with lots of things that I could not control, I switched it to a consulting model where you could hire me for 2-hour periods of time. I knew exactly when I was going to be in and out. And it was just so much more of a successful model and for what I wanted in terms of work-life integration and feeling like not constantly at the beck and call, so to speak, of my business. And that was a huge transformation. And I think probably one of the first times when I started to think, wait a minute, like you can do things differently and still achieve success. All this time I was having babies, right? So as I share in my book, The Possibility Mom, 4 babies in 5 years. And that's when I really started to make strategic time management decisions. And of course, that happened a lot in 2015 to 2017. And that's when I would say people were asking me pointed questions about how I was living my life. People observed the shift I had made in my interior design business, and they noticed that I was also like not as stressed, that I was able to show up at school events, that I was able to breathe a little bit more. I didn't have to decline all these social invitations that in the past I would have to say no to all the time because I was obsessed with working. And people started to, I guess, like take notice, and the questions about interior design began to cease. Or even like in the middle of a design consultation. So I would be in someone's home. They knew I had a bunch of kids. And the person who had hired me to come in for design would often stop me and say, okay, we just have to stop talking about my kitchen. Like, can you please explain how you live your life? I don't understand how you're physically standing here with, as many children as you have. Like, how are you not exhausted and just feeling like, so overwhelmed? Like, I'm overwhelmed with my one. How do you do it with your, insert how many number of kids I had at the time? And it just got me, to thinking like, okay, there is clearly something happening that I am maybe not as in tune with or aware of. There's something about the way that we're living that people want to know more about. And I remember what a challenge it was for me to get over that. Like, meaning, I was like, somebody wants to hear me talk about something other than interior design. I had almost made interior design a quote unquote sacred cow, to use that expression. I had made it this like be all and end all, and the only thing I could do. You know what I mean? And I started very slowly just recording YouTube videos and being a little bit more personal on Instagram and what have you. And then that is when eventually I had a conversation with a book publisher about really pivoting to what is now the Possibility Mom, sharing all the processes and systems that I've developed as a result of significant trial and error. And that leads us to January 2018 to 2019, which was really the birth of the Possibility Mom. I signed my book deal in 2017 and then wrote the book. It took me like 2.5 years, oh my word. From signing the contract to release date, it was 2.5 years. And in 2018, that was the very first time I charged money for coaching. And I remember the fear I had. Nikki Fisher Gigot. That's not how you say her last name. Gigot. Anyway, I'm so sorry, Nikki. She's a beautiful interior designer in the Milton, Oakville area, if I'm not mistaken. And she was the very first person to pay me for online coaching. And I will never forget the feeling I had. I remember back in the day, this is when I had not all the fancy sort of technology that I have now. It was all just on PayPal. It was like, here's an invoice on PayPal. Come join me in this 6-week life design program. And I'll just never forget the feeling of like, oh my gosh, like being absolutely terrified, feeling like an absolute fraud, but knowing in my heart of hearts that there was something there, that I had something to offer and that I could really help people. I will never forget that first group of women: Nikki, Dacia, Marie, Teresa, Ashley, and I'm forgetting Jackie. Those 6 women who made up my very first group of online coaching for moms. They were all over, Canada. I'll never forget that. That was such a transformative experience for me in challenging my own limiting beliefs. And this is the thing that I think is so important in entrepreneurship, in life in general. If you know me and have been hanging out here for a while, you know that I talk about this a lot, that we have to constantly examine and challenge and bust wide open our limiting beliefs, because our limiting beliefs are what get in the way of our most ideal life. If I had said back then, January 2018, if I had said no way, like nobody wants to hear me talk about motherhood, there would be no book. There would be no Possibility Mom YouTube channel. Like, I'd still be talking about interior design here. I wouldn't be here in Florida. I really believe that wholeheartedly. Like, if I had not stepped into that place of, I think there's something here, but I'm not sure. If I hadn't pushed past this feeling of, I don't want to fail, I want to stay in something comfortable, I honestly believe I wouldn't be sitting right here, right now, looking at the view that I wrote about in The Possibility Mom. In my book, I wrote about literally having a house exactly right here, looking at the view that I'm looking at now. Anyway, so that was the birth of online coaching. And that's when I started to build my confidence as a coach. I also invested heavily in myself as like I invested heavily in myself in coaching during that time. I worked with some incredible mentors, both in the areas of mindset as well as in the areas of online business. And that is when things really pivoted. So 2019, July is when I released The Possibility Mom. 2019 is also when I built out all of my online business properties. So it's like in 2017, 18, I was developing the methodology, developing the patterns and systems that I describe in The Possibility Mom. And then 2018, 19 was my time of online business confidence, if you will. But not only just confidence, like all the back end things. When you run a online business as opposed to a brick and mortar business, it's completely different like game, completely different things to learn. You need things like how to collect payment online. You need email collection. You need things like a Facebook pixel. You need all these things, all the things. And it was also a time of pivoting people, obviously, from knowing me as an interior designer to knowing me as a mom expert and a coach for moms. And that brings us to where we are today, which is like in a really happy, exciting place. I now live in Florida, which was a really big dream for our family. I now no longer design homes, although I do represent brands and create spaces for brands that execute my interior design skills. I still partner with brands in sponsored capacities to share products that I love. But mainly now, I am a speaker, author, and a coach, and primarily my business is online. And I have to say that I am obsessed with online entrepreneurship because of the potential there is. I remember I did, and I've shared this story before, but I'll just share it again super briefly. I did an online program by Marie Forleo. She just released a new book called Everything is Figure Outable. And in this program, I realized that my main desire was impact. I can hear the baby crying. Okay, well, maybe we'll wrap this up real quick. My main desire was impact. I realized that. And I realized as I was writing that I could, if I stayed primarily in interior design, where I was working with families, even if I was just consulting, I realized that I could only help families in maybe the hundreds. Like if I was really lucky and somebody booked me for an interior design consultation literally every single day, that was only 365 families I could help. And I remember thinking, that's not what I want. And this is why I think online entrepreneurship is so exciting. I think it's exciting because the impact can be great. You can literally impact thousands of people, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And you can do it from the comfort of your home. This was one of the big reasons why we were able to move to Florida, because I was no longer literally designing homes. I was no longer running around the city. We can do this kind of work anywhere. And here's the thing, I think it's available to all. This is what's so cool. I think online entrepreneurship is something that if you have a dream and a message in your heart, you can get that dream and message out via the internet, just like we're doing right now, and then begin realizing that if there are people who are looking for an answer to a problem, and you can provide that answer in a fun, entertaining, helpful, clear way, you can charge them money for it and build a business and a lifestyle and the income and the impact that you need to do the things that are on your heart. And I'm so passionate about it because I really think the doors are wide open for moms. I can think of so many people who are now thriving because they do their businesses from home. I can think of my wonderful friend. I have many wonderful friends who run fertility awareness based businesses. And they run these businesses from their home. They're helping women chart their cycles and get pregnant or not get pregnant or what have you, working from home, like in the room next door to their small children. I have so many stories of women. I just did a webinar with this amazing woman, Krista, who are in multi-level marketing companies and are just crushing it in their goals and building teams. I can think of women who have taken something in their head, like their philosophy on homeschooling or like their philosophy on living a healthy lifestyle, and then turn that into blogs and podcasts to help other people. My point here is that it's an exciting time. And I'm very excited with where my business has come. So I want to get to a couple of the Q&A. So I promised you it's going to be like part story time, part Q&A. So Q&A, let me pull up the questions. So one question I got that was really interesting was, how do you compartmentalize? Like, how do you as an entrepreneur not feel like your business is taking over your life, and that when you're with your children, you're not constantly thinking about business? So two parts of this question. I think that it's not a bad thing to be thinking about your business all the time. I think it's natural. Like when it's your business, when it's something that you have started, you're going to think about it. And, the smallest thing, you'll be out for a walk with your kids and you'll see something and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that would be a great idea for, a new blog post or what have you. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily wrong or bad to be thinking about your business. However, of course, it does become a problem when it's taking us away from the relationships that matter most and not allowing us to be really intentional and show up in them. My husband does not appreciate it. Let me tell you, when my phone is out at dinner, like it's a no-go. He wants to throw it in the lake. You know what I mean? And so what I would say is, for me, one of the things that I do is intentional blackout periods for my phone. So keeping it away and not around me, literally, for pockets of the day. And then, to be honest, sometimes you just have to say, I'm not going to entertain this thought. This can wait till tomorrow. To be honest, it's a choice. Like everything is a choice. We can decide how much we let an idea go down a rabbit hole. From a practical point of view, I do like to have, literally, I have like pieces of paper and notepads everywhere so that if I do have an idea, I can just get it out of my head. Again, putting it into my phone in a centralized place also is really helpful. But for those times that I have chosen to keep my phone away from me, having, I write things on like the backs of coloring pages and those, handouts you get at restaurants when the kids are there and they request to save every single one of them. And you're like, oh my gosh, we do not need any more paper that is stained with French fry oil in this house. So it's a choice. I think that's a big one. Okay. Another question I got was, how did you gain confidence in switching from interior design to mom coaching? I'll be honest with you, I got confident by doing it. And this might sound like a very, I don't know, like simple answer. But to be honest, this is what we have to do. You don't get confident at anything without gaining competence. I love this. My friend January Donovan says this all the time. Confidence comes from competence. And how do you get competent at something? You got to practice. And, when I first started out in interior design, I was giving away my services practically for free. When I had my very first group of women that I was coaching in an online manner, I charged a very, like a much lower price point than I think I would have typically charged, or that I charge today, to reflect that. I think there are many different ways that you can get confident as an entrepreneur. And one of the best ways is starting out by just going for it, volunteering your services, finding ways that you can get people to buy into whatever it is you're offering at a beta level. So meaning you're explaining that, hey guys, this is the very first time I'm running a program of this nature. I'd like you to be my beta test group. As a result, I would typically charge, $99 for this, but instead I'm going to charge only $49, and you're going to be able to give me feedback if that makes sense. So I think that's really important. Okay. Another question is, how do you know what to charge? So this is an interesting question. And of course, this varies depending on the the industry that you are in. It's definitely going to vary. But I would say one of the best ways. Okay, so two ways I want to answer this. Number one is market research. Obviously, you want to be able to see what is the market currently charging, and what can you charge for a similar type of service. Now, I don't love this because it's important to do. You definitely need to do market research, but not everybody puts their prices online. Number one. And number two, they do so for a really important reason, because sometimes when you price yourself in a certain way, you then just kind of disqualify a lot of people who are probably your target market or could very well be a really good customer. And sometimes when we put a price out there, it ends up getting positioned in somebody's head as either way too expensive or way too cheap. And let's just be very honest with you here. Pricing is about value. People pay for what they value. And something being cheap or expensive is so relative to what someone values. And so for me, the best way that I understood how to charge for my services was when I hired coaching, because they then were able to speak into what is the value you're providing. And let's be honest here too. I think a lot of times pricing comes with confidence. So meaning when you don't have confidence in the beginning, you might be like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could charge that. There's just no way. This was a very big pattern in my interior design business. In the very beginning, when I was charging for a 2-hour consultation, I want to say my charge for a 2-hour consultation in the beginning was $400. And I remember thinking, there is no way anyone is going to pay that. And then slowly, I remember I upped it to $549. I remember I upped it to $749. And that is what was my going rate. $749 for 2 hours when I stopped doing 2-hour interior design consultations. So I really do believe that how you price yourself is also tied to confidence. Okay. Another question is, what is the best decision you've ever made in your business? This is a really great question. And I think the way I'm going to answer it is to share with you the best decision I ever made in my business was getting out of my own way. And this is pivotal. I think when you are, especially if you're going to do online entrepreneurship and you're alone in your office, on your phone, talking to nobody. Do you know what I mean? You're hosting a webinar, or you're just interacting on your Instagram, doing stories. It can get really isolating, but it can also make you feel like, who am I to be doing this? Oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. There's no way I could launch X. There's no way I could do this. Look at what this person's doing. And honestly, getting out of your own way is the best advice I can give to an entrepreneur. We are often the thing that is going to stop us from our maximum potential, our maximum earning ability, our maximum impact on the world. So you might be thinking now, okay, that's really simple. How do you get out of your own way? Duh, get out of your own way. But how do you actually do that? And I'll be honest with you, for me, it's been being in community. So my mastermind um, has been a incredible source of help. I have been journeying with women every single Monday for the last, I think, 5 years. It's incredible. And we meet about business and life, and they speak hope into me when I have no hope. And they help me get out of my own way by helping me piece through and talk through all the things that are confusing to me and what have you. So get out of your own way is like the best decision I've ever made. Okay. And then another question that is a pretty common one is, how do you know what to do? If you want to start a business, like I really want to start a business, but I have no idea what to do. I would really begin with a feeling of, how do I want to help people? Like, what do I love helping people solve? What do I love doing that just fills me with so much fire that when I'm done, I'm like unstoppable? What are people always asking me, almost like, to help them solve? I think that can be a really, really important place to start. And then, because I can hear all of my beautiful children on the other side of the door, I think this will be the last question. What's the best investment you ever made in your business? And honestly, hands down, that has been the coaching I have received, particularly in the last year. In the last year, I have invested in the Ask Method with Ryan Levesque. And I'll put some information down below if you're interested. I just think that his methodology is a very interesting one and really helpful, because it all begins with asking questions. And the community that I have, just the friends I have made as a result of this group. He has lots of in-person meetups. Again, as an entrepreneur, there are many things that we do that are not at all relatable, I would say, to somebody who has a 9-to-5 job. There are so many mental hoops, even physical hoops, electronic hoops, so to speak, when you run an online business, that are just can be very challenging to solve. And so to have people who are a little bit ahead of you on the journey, and as well as right there in the mud with you, has been hugely transformational for my life. And so finally, 2020, the possibility mom. That is what I'm living now, is helping moms be great moms while pursuing their dreams at the same time. I think my personal strengths lie in helping people understand what their purpose is, like what are they meant to do. And I do that through my book, The Possibility Mom, which you can get anywhere you love to buy books. I'll put some links below, as well as my signature program, Conquer Your Calendar, and my one-on-one coaching. And I want to share with you, at time of filming today, I have just opened the doors to my Inner Circle Mastermind and one-on-one coaching. Even if you're just curious, I would encourage you to apply. I'll drop the link right below. I am so excited about this. I really feel like coaching is the fastest way to get to where you want to go. Do you want to walk, or do you want to drive? Do you want to drive, or do you want to fly? And I just think that the one-on-one element, as well as the group peer support, helps you get to where you want to go faster, because number one, I'm going to give you a plan. And number two, there are going to be people, myself and mastermind members, holding you accountable to that plan. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had like a project or a dream that you've just sort of like not understood why you couldn't get off the ground? It can be catapulted, if you will. Like your success, your mission, your impact can be catapulted when you have a guide to help you get there, but as well as unblock the mental blocks that naturally come when you're doing something that is new and scary. Final thing I'm going to say. Our brain wants to keep us safe, okay? I've talked about this concept a lot here, so I won't go too much further. But our brain wants to keep us safe. Anytime we're going to do something new, the brain's going to be like, no way, no, 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 do not cross go. Sometimes it requires somebody to say, hold on a second there. You can do it. Here's how. We're going to do it together. It's not going to be that scary, to literally get your brain out of scarcity thinking and fear and wanting to keep you safe. What if the thing, once you get over the fear, is actually the safer thing? So if you are interested, if you are even just curious, just go hit that button below. Go click the link below, hit the button to apply. I would love to help you get closer to your most ideal life, and do it together. All right. Thanks so much for listening to my journey. If you are interested in more about entrepreneurship and how to grow your business and how to live a life where you can be a great mom and pursue your dreams at the same time, I've made a playlist for you that I will link right up here. And we'll see you on the other side.